My dear countrymen, my friends, I have a question to ask you. Do you remember if you ever had a classroom discussion on your relationship with the country? We call India our country. Of course it's our country. But what exactly does it mean? It means that I live here, that I vote, that I'm a citizen, or that I am the owner of this country. And what does any of these really mean? We have taken it for granted. And don't you think that because you've taken it for granted, we have left a lot of our future in the hands of people who we are not even aware of? A second question that I'm tempted to ask is that, do you know how many things in your life are clear to you, they seem to work for you only because you have been taught about those things? Like cleanliness is not a natural habit. Regularity, punctuality, that we have to keep our promises, a lot of these things are not natural. They've been taught to us. Similarly, I believe that this relationship with the country has to be curated, has to be well explained for it to become widespread in the country. And this is not my original thought. This was the need that I felt that we did not fulfill in our country. And when I looked around the country, around the world, I found many countries did that. Our country has not done that. To fill this void, me and some of my friends, my colleagues, we created a foundation called Desh, Apnayen Foundation. Oh, let's own our country. Why? Simply because when we own anything, we feel responsible for it. We like to keep it safe, secure, to improve, to progress. If we leave it to somebody else, obviously these things don't happen. And maybe if our country has not progressed to its optimum, one of the reasons may be that we have not participated in it in a manner that was expected of us. After all, in a democracy, are you a mere voter or you own the country? When our constitution was drafted and we said, we the people, who were those people? Merely those who wrote the constitution? Or we the people who made a promise to ourselves not only to give ourselves those rights, but also to create an environment in which those rights could be protected and those rights could be made meaningful? Listen to the TED Talk and join us in the movement. How can you join us? So there are several initiatives. The most important initiative at this point of time is one, to create citizenship education popular in schools. We have made a fairly significant effort to change the pedagogy of civics so that it is closer to learning about citizenship. And you can help us take this program to one or more schools that you know. You can become a volunteer with us. You can give us many ideas as to how to create this ownership program. And we have initiated citizenship clubs in schools. These citizenship clubs not only become the resident anchors of this thought, but we have to make them impactful. You could play a big role in thinking of ways in which these clubs make an impact. You could be a volunteer for them. You could be a volunteer for us. In any case, if this interests you, if you think this is relevant and it moves you, please go to our Facebook page and say what you think about us. Thank you very much. I'm here today to speak about citizenship education and engagement with your country
and maybe reshaping democracy. While my talk focuses on India, it's actually about my personal journey and probably about a new world order. Every time we go to the West or go to a country like Japan or Singapore, it's very typical of us to start wishing, oh, only if our country was like that. Clean, disciplined, people showing respect for the law of the land, respect for others' rights, and so on. Let me share a few images as to what all this adds up to. These are from Fukushima, the unfortunate site of a triple tragedy a few years ago in Japan. Hundreds of people queuing up for small supplies or to make just a phone call. No jostling, no wailing, no police bandobast. The most extraordinary part of that was that not a single valuable, not even a cup, was reported stolen. Such amazing behavior. What pains me and has pained me since childhood, and I've cried pillowfuls, why isn't my country like that? Are we incapable of such behavior, personally or demanding it? Answer is no. Everywhere Indians have gone after migration, they have risen to the topmost ranks of those societies. Even in our country, we find Parsis showing a different level of social behavior, civil behavior. Why? Because the parents set an example and enforce those habits on their children. So one answer is to hand over all our children to the Parsis. That's not viable because they are not even getting enough of their own children. But so it's obvious that civil behavior is a matter of cultivation and is not inborn. Let's talk of change. And while the changes can be initiated, identified by a leader, that's not what perpetuates change. There has to be a follow-up mechanism, and you will find the history of the world tell you that it's always a teacher. The teacher at home are wonderful mothers, or the teachers at school. Let me give you an example. Mahatma Gandhi got the common man involved in freedom fight by assigning them simple tasks like spinning the charkha, joining the Prabhat Feri or the morning procession, a prayer meeting, doing small errands. Over a period of time, this became a great nationalist force. The same barriers of caste, creed, language, etc. existed, probably a lot more, but still it became a huge force and it played a big role in our freedom fight. But post-independence, maybe this engagement with the country was taken for granted and we lost that force. Fortunately for some countries, they recognized the power of this engagement with the country. Take countries like Singapore, Israel, or the post-war Japan. After being bombed out in 1945, within 20 years of that, Japan had finished holding the Olympics and the Global Expo. India has yet to do it. And not only countries like them, but our research showed that country after country recognized the power of citizenship engagement. And not only the obvious names like Sweden, Holland, or France, Germany, but even names like Hungary, Italy, Spain. And this list is rather dated. The current list would have so many more countries. New countries like Vietnam, countries even in the Middle East are thinking about this. The most typical program that countries found to be most effective was that of citizenship education at schools. Let me talk about a couple of countries. We started with Fukushima. If you went to Japan, you will find schools insisting that most of the students walk to the school. periodically clean the classroom, engage in events that familiarize them with nation's problems and pride. If they are caught short in civil behavior, they cannot hope to get any merit, even may be held back. No wonder the results that we saw. You went to Singapore, a country born only in 1965. They pay a lot of attention to what goes on at schools. The national values are emphatically inculcated in these students, such as country before community, society before self, consensus over conflict, religious harmony, and so on. And what they export to the world is also well known. The question arises, why didn't it happen in India? And I hate to speculate, and I'm only speculating. But from my early days to now, this has struck me that probably the divisiveness that accompanied our independence got institutionalized in our politics. And therefore, maybe the leadership thought it counterproductive to engage with citizens. Kind of saying, leave it to us, main hu na, sarkar hai na, that kind of approach. I hope the recent appeal by the Prime Minister on Swachh Bharat is just not a stray event, but a trend. One more aspect, and that's about democracy. And it's not only democracy in India, but probably democracy around the world. That the ground reality is probably not what the popular definition of democracy is. For the people, of the people, by the people. We find only a small section of society join politics or join administrative services. And therefore, as a result, what we find that one category of dynasty seems to have taken over from another category of dynasty. This has to change. And moreover, the cost of suffering a government when it is not performing and waiting for whatever be the period, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, is very expensive. We have to find a way where we force the government's hand to deliver the governance that is promised to us and that is due to us. And I'm not saying it. Thomas Jefferson said this long back. He said that when people fear the government, it is tyranny. When government fears the people, it is true liberty. We need to have true liberty. Why shouldn't democracy be defined to say that citizens are a big part of it? Think about it. That unless we join in keeping security, providing intelligence, in keeping our neighborhoods clean, in keeping our promises and paying taxes, in improving the quality of what we do, how can our country get ahead? We need to do that. And the last point, and it's a global factor today, that in the name of welfare, democracies have become profligate. The cost of governance and the debts that the countries have run up are so huge that they have kind of crushed the whole world. We need a new definition of democracy. A system in which we elect governments which are for the people, of the people, with the people, and at reasonable cost. So what do we do? My colleagues and I, out of this pain that I harbored for many, many years, and actually I got out of business to focus on things like this. We started the Desh Apnayen Foundation. It's actually a movement, and we need thousands of such foundations to do this work, to wake our citizens up to the reality that how we have suffered, how we have lagged behind, way behind our potential in every aspect, from academics to economics, from sports to spirituality, and of course civil behavior. We need to recognize that Indians cannot continue, and that applies probably to several countries in the world, if you go by the percentage of voting, that we cannot be just residents in this country, at best voters once in a while, obsessed with our families, with our careers, with our homes, leaving the country to someone else. We need to take charge. So, we said, what do? We started with a wide agenda, but soon recognized that introducing citizenship education in schools was probably the most effective and tried and tested formula around the world. I'm absolutely delighted with the response that we got from schools. We recognize schools have a lot of constraints. The curricula are not always set by them. There are school boards, there are state boards. So we found that in this country we teach a subject called civics. We thought, let's convert civics to citizenship education by changing the pedagogy of that subject. To do much when the marks allocated to civics is merely 20 or 30 in an aggregate of 800 or 1,000 is not much, but you have to make a beginning. And the school's response has been amazing. 75,000 kids with 60 leading schools of Bombay have come on board in the very first year with very limited outreach effort. This number, of course, has to go to thousands and thousands of schools across the country. While the schools have come on board, we're still struggling with a challenge, and that challenge is the parents. The obsession of parents, and I heard other speakers talk about it, with marks and careers, leaves little room for some of the things that mentioned here, country, citizenship, and so on. Can I only remind them that if India is an independent country, it is because the best of the professionals for several decades decided to give up their careers because they recognized that unless India was a free and a secure country, the rewards of their successful careers would be only illusionary. The challenge today is not the same, but it's not dissimilar either. Fortunately, we need to do a very small effort in joining this fight and achieve great results if we have to make our country truly Mahan. I'm conscious that I'm talking about India, but look around the world. You look at the 2-3 principles that we talked about. Change. You can talk change, but unless you think of mechanisms to follow up, nothing will happen. Unless you participate in what is the collective good, nothing will happen. Schools are at a unique position. The parents in schools have the unique power, and I want to address them, that seize this opportunity, recognize the change required, at least in India, and come along. Catch them young. Make them aware, skilled, sturdy, active, and they will grow into understanding, supporting, demanding, and volunteering citizens. No problem, within or without, can limit, far less defeat a country like that. I look forward to a day like that. Thank you very much.